Welcome to the third annual Women's Leadership Conference hosted by the San Francisco Sheriff's Office. I'm Tara Moriarty, the Director of Communications for the Sheriff, and with us today we have a very special guest. He has been a very staunch supporter of law enforcement, and we greatly appreciate his presence here. Please put your hands together for the 46th Mayor of the City and County of San Francisco, Daniel Lurie.
Can you see me behind these flowers? Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. Well, good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be with you all to come together to celebrate the power, resilience, and leadership of women in public safety. This year's theme, Women in Public Service, Representation Matters, speaks to a fundamental truth. When women lead, our communities become stronger. Research shows that women in law enforcement improves community relations and results in better outcomes. Representation matters. A young girl seeing a woman in uniform or speaking about their experiences in law enforcement can be life-changing. It shows her that she belongs in those spaces, that she too can serve, protect, and be a leader in the community. The unique perspective that women bring to law enforcement is irreplaceable and should not and will not go unnoticed. To every woman serving in public safety and beyond, your work matters, your leadership matters, and your presence here today is proof of the progress we've made and the power of women supporting women. Your commitment and sacrifice to public service is inspiring, and I thank you for being here today to invest in yourselves as leaders, both locally and nationally. And I want to thank the San Francisco Sheriff's Office and their 30 by 30 committee for their commitment to aiming to increase the representation of women in their ranks to 30% by 2030. My administration will always have your back and continue to support putting together events like this that elevate and empower women in public safety. I will close by telling you that, not law enforcement related, but my daughter is 13, and she came upon a world-renowned chef, the only 3-star Michelin chef this past weekend on Saturday. She's the only chef in the country that has 3 stars. And she said to my daughter, "You can do anything you put your mind to." And my daughter was just like starstruck. And I have the same feeling about you in this room. Continue to lead, and we will follow, and we will have your back. So thank you for being here today, Sheriff. Thank you for having me today. Appreciate you.
All right, and now we have the presentation of colors by the San Francisco Sheriff's Office Color Guard.
Stand by. Color. Forward. 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 March. Colors. Detail. Halt. Present. Arms.
And now, here to sing our national anthem, a young woman who has been performing on stage since the age of 8, San Francisco's own Flora Hue.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Flora. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Junior Deputy Kay Hess.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order! Arms! About! Face! Half face, turn. Present, arms. Order, arms. Half face, turn. Forward, march.
So once again, welcome to the 3rd Annual Women's Leadership Conference. First off, I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here today. I know some of you came from places very far away. I think Texas was the farthest, so we really appreciate your presence here. I also want to thank Assistant Sheriff Carter, as well as Chief John Ramirez. They've done a wonderful job organizing this event. and all of the deputies and professional staff who really stepped up to make sure that everything has been running smoothly behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. When we talk about women and women succeeding in law enforcement, I wanted to share with you a brief story. About a month into my job, I got a call from a reporter who wanted to interview a sworn staff member who worked in our custody division. I said, "I'll get you Lieutenant Bowie." When Lieutenant Bowie called the reporter was confused. "No," he said, I need to speak to the lieutenant." Lieutenant Bowie was like, "This is the lieutenant." The reporter was so embarrassed, he profusely apologized because he admitted that he played into that stereotype of women in law enforcement. He assumed that Lieutenant Bowie was a man. Lieutenant Bowie is now a captain and the first Asian female captain in our department. This story serves to show that women need male champions. Somewhere along the way, it was most likely a man who gave a female staffer a break. And that break caused another kind of a break, or perhaps a crack, that would one day shatter the proverbial glass ceiling. One man who has not shied away from putting women in leadership roles, our very own sheriff, Paul Miyamoto, who is here to deliver some remarks.
Thank you, Tara. Good morning, everybody. Okay, let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. A lot better. We're going to have a lot of energy today, and I am just very, very happy to be here, honored to be hosting this event and being here all together with all of you. The mayor was right. These are really nice flowers, but really, really high. So let me adjust the mic here. And again, you know, while I'm the sheriff of San Francisco, first and foremost, I'm a husband and father. And in fact, the father of 3 young women. Along with my wife, we've raised them here in the city. A little bit about Leanne and her role in our family as a role model for those children. She served in the sheriff's office and as a police officer for many, many years. Moved on to the better job of taking care of the 5 kids. And I just can't help but think that the fact that they just take for granted her position and her responsibilities when working for the city in public safety and law enforcement, just by default, we're an example of what we're trying to achieve here, which is bring that mentorship, bring that leadership, that example for others to follow into the fore. And that's what the purpose is of this event today. I think each of us can really step up in public service. Our gathering is an opportunity for leaders in our profession to share their experiences, to share their journeys, and to inspire others to become the leaders of tomorrow. That is how reputation matters, through that mentorship. Taking on leadership roles to teach and challenge the next generation is very challenging. And we've gone through ups and downs in this profession. We've gone through challenges in law enforcement and public safety. In my personal experience, growing up through the sheriff's office, I know that I was personally inspired by women in leadership roles in our department. Our first woman sheriff, Vicki Hennessy, who was our first woman sheriff, as well as the director of emergency management here in the city, served as one of those mentors. I followed her path and became who I am today. We had another retired chief deputy, Veronica Keller, who was my very first captain and who identified from my first incident report that there was something in me that she wanted to nurture and inspire to do more. They both rose through the ranks, just as I have, to help improve the culture within our department. They were always a beacon of positivity, strong leaders with long-lasting contributions to the health of the department through developing that future leadership. It's people like them who blaze the trail for future leaders and for future contributions to our agencies, to our community. Our amazing lineup of leaders today, the people that will be sitting on the panels that you will be attending, the moderators that are going to be guiding the discussions and conversations, all of them are here to help mentor us through what we define as representation mattering. Right now, women make up about 13.8% of law enforcement agencies nationwide. As was mentioned by the mayor, we're involved in the 30 by 30 program, which is intended to attain a level of 30% women in our department by 2030. Currently, we have 20% total staff that are women in our department, but we are obviously striving to do more. I'm sorry, 22%. Our leadership, those that have promotional rank, we're at 22% in our department. I'm very proud to say that our current executive command, my second in command, Kathy Gorwood Johnson, Kathy Larry Johnson, where are you? Right over here. And our assistant sheriff, Tanzania Carter, both women who are the second and third in command in our agency. I also want to mention too, and a shout out to our legal team, Ronnie and Kelly, everybody who's here today. Our entire legal team is made up of women and comprised of women. That's why, thank you. That's why 30 by 30 is so important. We signed the pledge 3 years ago, and we have until 2030 to get there. And we have our continued commitment to do so through events like today. We're going to keep forging ahead, and we again want to thank all of you for coming. I think it was Officer Ann Carrizales from Texas. Tara mentioned that we had someone from Texas. I want to thank personally all of the leadership that is here sitting on the panels, the sheriffs, the chiefs, all of you who are here to help us give people our perspectives, our experience, our suggestions for how to succeed and how to be the best that you can be in our agencies and as part of public safety. We all hope that you come away from this conference with something that you feel you can take back to your respective agencies, to your respective communities, and share with others and mentor others as we are trying to mentor you today. So thank you all for being here. I want to get into this program as soon as possible, so thank you again for being here.
All right, I think we're going to get started. Welcome to 30 by 30 Values from a Male's Perspective. 3 chiefs, a sheriff, and a colonel up here on, it almost sounds like the beginning of a joke. Sorry. All right. I'm going to let our moderator, Chief Quantico, give some introductions for them. But first, I wanted to tell you about Chief Quantico. He has been with our department since 1996, so almost 29 years. He currently serves as the Chief of Custody, a massive undertaking as we have about 1,300 people who are currently in our housing facilities. Chief Quantico is not only good at his job, but he is an upstanding member of the community, and many know him as Coach Quantico because he coaches basketball, baseball, football. So with that, I'm going to toss the ball over to you.
Great, Tara. Thank you. Let's give it a hand for Tara Moriarty. Thank you, Tara. So there's nothing like Women's History Month being the same time as March Madness. That's how special this event is. This is our 3rd annual Sheriff's Office Women's Leadership Conference, and we have a full day of festivities for everyone. But I'm honored to start the day with the 30 by 30 values from male perspectives, right? And we have some distinguished guests here today. I'm so happy they were able to make it and be part of this. Like Tara said, I'm Jim Quantico. I've been a chief deputy here for the last few months, captain at the old county jail, or excuse me, the new county jail 3. And like I said, I've been through the ranks for the past 29 years. I'm a huge advocate of the sheriff's goal of the 30 by 30. We want to get to that 30% by 2030. And, improving gender equity, and excited to hear our panel's perspectives for today. Their full bios are in your programs. We want to kind of respect the time, for this session. They have incredible bios. Please take the time to read each and one of them, because everyone on this panel has a great history. So take the time to read them. So without further ado, let's introduce our panelists. it's like a starting five of a basketball team. I used to moderate in, basketball games, so this is perfect. So I want to start out with Chief Michael Carroll here to my left. He's with the San Jose State University Police Department. Chief Michael Carroll has been employed with San Jose State Police for the past 3 years. Before becoming the Chief of Police, Chief Carroll served as a law enforcement officer with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office for 26 years. I've known Mike for a while, right before COVID and after COVID. Had the opportunity as the training manager to meet Mike. He introduced cultural humility to our Sheriff's Department for advanced officer training. To this day, Mike, thank you for doing that for us.
Sure, no problem.
And thank you for being here. So, Chief Mike Carroll. So next, you guys can give applause. Come on. So next we have Chief Kevin Franklin with the Bay Area Rapid Transit Police Department. Chief Franklin was appointed as Chief of Police on October 2nd, 2023. Kevin began his law enforcement career in 1989 at the Oakland Police Department after transferring to the BART Police Department in 1996. If you read his bio, Chief Franklin is really big in the community. We were speaking earlier in the back. He's really big into scouts. I know his son was a Boy Scout, and he puts a lot of time in the community serving with the Boy Scouts of America. So please, round of applause for Chief Franklin. All right, next we have the Sheriff of the City and County of San Francisco, Sheriff Paul Miyamoto. Sheriff Paul Miyamoto is the first Asian American sheriff elected in San Francisco in its 175th year anniversary. So, and other than that, he's assumed office since January 8, 2020. He's a fourth generation San Franciscan. He joined the sheriff's office in 1996 and swiftly ascended through the ranks. And I mean, I was right behind him. I mean, swiftly. So please, I want to introduce my boss and good friend, Sheriff Paul Miyamoto. All right. His partner in crime here in San Francisco, I want to introduce Chief William Scott, who is the chief of the San Francisco Police Department. San Francisco Police Chief William Scott was sworn in by Mayor Ed Lee on January 23rd, 2017, after serving 27 years with the Los Angeles Police Department, where he rose to the rank of deputy chief. He's been focused on implementing the 21st century policing reforms to address public safety and reduce crime in San Francisco. Besides, once again, being a Women's History Month, it's also March Madness. I had the opportunity to sit through a high school basketball game with the chief, and I really want to get his Final Four for the women and men's tournament. So, Chief Scott, we'll be talking later on. All right, lastly, Chief, thanks for being here. Lastly, we have retired Colonel Eric Schaffa with the United States Air Force. So Colonel Eric Schaffa from the United States Air Force is the U.S. Air Force Chair and Military Professor at the Dwight D. Eisenhower School for National Security and Resource Strategy and Natural Defense University for McNair, Washington, D.C. He's an instructor in national security and industrial base studies and the lead for the electronic warfare industry study. Colonel Schaffa has participated in several deployments in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, including direct combat support in Iraq and Afghanistan. So this is a special day for me as well, not only from the distinguished chiefs and sheriffs that we have here, but I also went to grammar school and high school with Eric. More important, he was my wingman when I met my beautiful wife, Elma, back in 1987. What better wingman can you have than Colonel Eric Schaffa? So, Colonel, welcome aboard. Thank you. So let's give a warm welcome to all our distinguished panelists. Man, I never talk so much. All right. Little ground rules, gentlemen. I will be asking a series of questions. Please limit your responses to 2 to 3 minutes. I will let you know when you reach the 2-minute and 30 mark. I want to ensure that we save time for our audience so they can ask follow-up questions. All right, since I got Mike Carroll next to me, might as well start out with Mike.
Sure.
All right. Your first question is, how has your understanding of women's leadership evolved over the years? Can you share a personal experience where you witnessed the impact of a female leader?
Sure. So when I first started in law enforcement in '97 with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, of course we had the traditional leadership. It was male-dominated, white male-dominated law enforcement. And people tended to operate in a more tactical format. And so over the years, I've seen it evolve where now our law enforcement has to reflect our community. And so not only have we diversified in ethnicity and nationality and religion, we also diversified in gender. And so what I've noticed is, in my short term as a leader, is that it's imperative that we have women in that leadership structure, more at the higher ranks, because women bring a different perspective. I often tell people, men are like bulls in a china shop. Women, they will finesse. They will operate with empathy, apathy, sympathy. They utilize the de-escalation skills that you would like to see men use. And I think having women at the leadership and at the forefront of leadership, it trickles down. So where I've personally experienced this is as the captain with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office. In the jail, I was introducing what is called a therapeutic living community for those who are incarcerated. And it's designed to give those who are incarcerated the skill sets so that they could be productive community members when they return back to our communities. And as you share it with officers will do it, and they will do it just because it's something that's a directive that's given to them. But I've seen women embrace it, and I put a female lieutenant at the forefront of it because I saw her passion, I saw her understanding, I saw her commitment, and that right there became a model for the Alameda County Sheriff's Office. And it was driven because you had someone who understood, who had motherly-like skill sets, who embraced the whole concept and made it her own, and it actually was very, very successful. It was so successful that the inmates from Santa Rita wanted to come to North County. The officers from Santa Rita wanted to come to North County, and it drove the sheriff to do an inquiry as to why. And the reason people gravitated towards North County because it gave that family-like feeling. The inmates were really, really receptive to the new concept, and the officers were receptive because it reduced fights. You saw inmates engage. You saw them embrace the information that they was being taught, and they were actually sharing it with their family members. And so that was because we had a female leader at the time who understood.
Chief, thank you for that.
Sure.
Appreciate that. So Chief Kevin Franklin, I want to ask you the same question. How has your understanding of women's leadership evolved over the years? And can you share a personal experience where you witnessed the impact of a female leader?
You know, starting out at the Oakland Police Department, and even prior to that, with some volunteer work at a local sheriff's department, I've had the opportunity, I think my first training officer was a woman. And, you know, I've just always had that respect of somebody who taught me my foundational skills being a woman. And I haven't had that, you know, kind of thought that, you know, a woman doesn't have a place in law enforcement. I believe that, you know, as Chief Carroll said, you know, our staff have to reflect the communities we serve, and everybody brings a different skill set to this job. And people have even asked me about, you know, what really does diversity mean? And to me, diversity is not only in what we look like, but our skills and our thought processes and how we, you know, bring a different knowledge to the job, because all of us are smarter than any of us are individually. And so we put that together. And I think that, you know, if I think of, you know, something that is bringing a different change to an agency, I've worked with a lot of different women. I mean, I rely right now on a team of deputy chiefs, and that includes Deputy Chief Gina Galletti, who's here, who's an excellent part of our team. I really couldn't do my job without the team that's surrounding me. And if I think about people who I've worked with who've really brought change to an organization. I had an opportunity to work with Chief Ann Kirkpatrick at the Oakland Police Department when she was here, and watched some of the work that she did around that agency and the challenges that Oakland has with just structural issues and the crisis that is in that city, and kind of some of the ways that she was able to come into that agency and make some pretty big changes within that was kind of inspirational to me, and inspirational in some of the ways that I've felt, with other people that I've worked with as well.
Great. Thank you, Chief Franklin. I'm going to inject some, other questions in here that are more personal, but we're going to move on and stay focused. This is for Sheriff Miyamoto. So my question to you, Sheriff, is how can a male leader actively mentor and support aspiring female leaders in their organizations?
I think, I was actually getting ready to answer the first question, so this may take me a second. I really believe that mentorship in any agency, especially in a law enforcement agency, should be something that we do across the board. One of the philosophies that I follow is the 5 T's: take the time to train, take the time to talk, take the time to teach. When you do that, you engage in that mentorship. You can have formal programs that are geared towards all of your membership, regardless of rank. You can have formal programs specific to preparing people for promotional exams or for promotional opportunities. But I really believe that leading by example is one of the key components to motivate people based on their gender or cultural diversity or ethnic diversity. Seeing a person that looks like you in a position of leadership is very important. And actually, just seeing somebody who's accomplished, who takes the time to talk to you, who takes the time regardless of whether or not you're a male or a female, or whether or not you're a different race or culture, it crosses over all of those things, and just taking that time to speak to somebody and inspire them to support them with your words, or your words of encouragement, or giving them a recipe or a path, or just sharing your own experiences. I think that's what's really important about the mentorship component. We're very fortunate, and Mike Hennessy was our sheriff for many, many years, the person that hired most of us in this room, if not all of us in this room. And he led the way in terms of putting people in leadership positions. I've grown up in an agency where it's just normal for me to see women in positions of leadership. I mentioned in my opening remarks that I had 2 of my mentors specifically who were women in our department in leadership roles. And they took the time to talk to me and mentor me, not because of my gender. So that's an example of what I'm trying to mention here. I think it's important to continue to have people in those roles and to continue to have people in positions. Chief Carroll, Mike mentioned, having people in leadership positions, regardless of what they look like, should inspire all of us. So we should take that time to do those things as we move our agencies forward.
Great, thank you, Sheriff. And that's one of the things that our executive command talk with the sheriff all the time is about mentoring. And that's, something that it's a lost art. There's just not enough executive staff that are mentoring, the folks of the future. I had the opportunity to be mentored by Under Sheriff Johnson, then Sergeant Gorwood, and I felt like I, passed on the torch to Captain Bowie, who's all making us proud of who she is today. So, no, mentoring is definitely a big part. And Sheriff, thank you for your perspective. I really appreciate that. Chief Scott, I'm going to ask you the same question. So, how can male leaders actively mentor and support aspiring female leaders in their organizations?
Yes, thank you. So for me, it starts early in a person's career. And I've always felt that you have to give people, number one, inspiration to be whatever it is that they aspire to be, but it has to start early. And I know just personally for me, people actually reached down to me, I would say, because they were at much higher ranks and saw something in me and provided opportunities for me to learn and train. And that's how I've always tried to be in terms of a mentor, is really giving people an opportunity to train, to be around people that they may not have access to. And when you go higher in any organization, the harder it is for people, particularly people who are less tenured or just starting in their careers, to have that access. So number one, you got to give access. With that access, you have to do something with the time that you spend together, or when you give a person access, make the best of it. And just oftentimes, sharing career advice or giving people opportunities or guiding them in the right direction in terms of career choices. We don't necessarily tell people what to do in their careers, but giving them insight on a path that they can take to be whatever it is they want to be is really, really important. And I say that because the higher you go up, the more competitive it becomes. And oftentimes the foundational things that really propels a person's career and their development, if those things are missing, they don't get those opportunities to aspire to be leaders in organizations, particularly in policing. So I've always tried to focus on giving opportunities to people earlier in their careers to build a foundation. One of the things that we've done during my time here is opened up, some of the national training like IECP and even major city chiefs to people who aren't chiefs, because when you sit in the room and you get to talk to people and see what they do and hear what they do and how they do it, a lot of success is understanding that you belong. And it's hard to sometimes to feel like you belong if you never get an opportunity to be in the room. So we have to invite people in the room. The other thing is, I think, is this is a male-dominated profession, and over the years, what I've seen is, certain assignments tend to not have women. And I remember earlier in my career, this is my captain commander days, or in our gang unit at that time, another department, but our gang unit, there were very, very few women leading gang units. And when I sat down and talked to women that I thought would really do a really good job there, what I would hear is, this is a good old boys club. I mean, I thank you for the offer, but, I go in there, I don't have support. It's going to be really hard for me to kind of change the culture. And what that taught me is you have to put a network of support around people, not throw them in a lion's den, so to speak, and expect people to succeed. And none of us would want to be done like that. So it really taught me that in order to change some of the cultural issues in our profession, number one, we have to give people opportunities, but you also have to set them up for success. And mentoring and teaching people how to build whatever network they need around them to be successful is really important, because a lot of the work we can do as leaders to help people, but you have to teach people how to help themselves as well. And I know I appreciated when that was done for me, and I think for a lot of women that I've talked to and been around in my careers, one of the biggest things is they don't feel like they're supported. You put me in a situation that's a no-win situation without support, and that's not good for anybody. Not their career, it's not good for their success. So we have to set them up for success. The other thing I'll say is just it is really, really important in terms of mentorship that people are allowed to have say in their careers. And that's not always easy to do. I mean, we always talk about mission first in an organization, but people need a say in their careers, because at the end of all of this, and I think this applies to men and women, we have families, we have lives outside of work. And what I've heard from a lot of women partners that I've become close with over the years, colleagues that I've become close with, is oftentimes I think women are put in this position, particularly in family situations, where they feel like they have to choose between being a mother or being a career person. And organizationally, we have to support people, men and women, but particularly for women, who have been put in those positions, to make sure that we give them the support that they can support their families in the way that they want to and have a career. And that at times can be very difficult. And as a male leader, I can imagine, what being a mother is like. I've been married for many, many years now. And my wife has worked through most of her career. So I hear her perspective, but I have never lived in your shoes. So having an understanding of what it takes to support somebody who has to have that balance as a mother and as a career person, it's important for men to really be understanding and empathetic and try to make that work. Because we do have, when we are in these leadership men or in these leadership positions, we have the ability to make things better. And I think that's critically important because too many people have had to have that fork in the road situation where it's career or motherhood. And I don't think that that's where we want to be as an organization, as a profession, and we have to make that situation better.
Great, thanks, Chief. So I want to inject one of those questions I talked about, and this is for Chief Carroll. What inspired you to join law enforcement, Chief?
So I grew up in San Francisco, and I was an anti-law enforcement type person because of what I've experienced in my community. So I've been pulled out at gunpoint. I've been laid on the ground, and I was really clean one day. I had a white Adidas sweatsuit, some white shell-toe Adidas. I think I was Run DMC before Run DMC. And San Francisco PD, it looked like Bill Scott, put me on the ground at gunpoint, and it was raining and my sweatsuit was all messed up. So I had no desire to be a cop. My community was anti-law enforcement. I went to Cal, and Cal, we had a number of protests. I remember having a picture where it said something about fun police or something like that. A couple of words were missing, but it said something police. And started working at juvenile hall and saw the impact that I was making at juvenile hall. And someone said, you should become an Alameda County Sheriff's deputy. And I thought about it, but then I was kind of apprehensive because I know the people in my community aren't receptive to law enforcement. But I figured if we're going to change this profession, I want to be part of it. And so I decided, let me just go ahead and become a police officer. Growing up in San Francisco, if you've never been to jail, you never went to General Hospital, and you never gone to court, you don't really know what a sheriff does. So I actually started the academy not having an idea what I was going to be doing. I just knew that it paid well. And then as I flipped through the pages, I saw that I was going to be a cop. And at that point, I decided, if I'm going to do this, I want to be the liaison for the community and law enforcement and bridge that gap. And that's what I've been working really hard to do. Initially, it started off bridging the gap between law enforcement and the African-American community. Now it's just bridging the gap between law enforcement and the community as a whole. And over the years, I've seen change. I've been part of that change. One of the most impactful things that I've experienced as a law enforcement officer is I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to go to what is called the Willie Conference. And to walk into the Willie Conference and see so many women in leadership roles, it was really emotional. And so I dedicated that if I ever become a chief, if I ever become in charge of a unit, I'm going to make sure that we send women to the Willie Conference. And so here at San Jose State, I have 35 funded positions for law enforcement officers, but I send 9 people to the Willie Conference every year. And it's because I really want women to know that I value them, I appreciate them, and I want to give them the opportunity to be in a space where it's nothing but them learning about them and creating a network. And so this year I have 9 individuals, 3 are males, going to the Willie Conference. So.
Well, thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. And well, I'm glad you changed your mind, too, because you've been a great leader. Appreciate it. All right, Colonel Schaff, I didn't forget you. Here's your question. Have you ever had a situation where one of your female leaders were criticized when they were assigned to a task, assignment, or a mission? How did you handle the situation?
So first of all, let me say thank you for allowing me to be on this distinguished panel and being part of this event. I'm obviously in a different uniform, but I think all of us are cut from the same cloth, which is doing service before self. And I guess you could say I was a native of San Francisco. I grew up here, obviously, with James and our other buddy over there in the crowd there, Chuck, and had an opportunity to do many things here. I think one of the unique things about growing up here in California and in San Francisco is that it is a melting pot of all different cultures. One of the things that is unique when I got into the military was that, and one thing I think attracted me to it was you take people from all walks of life, regardless of gender, race, religion, and you put them together and you say, okay, let's go do a mission. We're going to train you, and we expect you to go do these things. And you have people from urban areas, you have people from rural areas in the Midwest, and you come together as a team, and you get beyond all the bias that we may have because of where we grew up or how we were raised, and you are expected to perform. And from my experiences, I had a fantastic opportunity to see some high performers in a lot of different and very challenging environments. Clearly, in the last 20 years or so, we've had 2 wars and been on a lot of deployments and a lot of tough situations. And I've seen people rise to the occasion to be able to come up with solutions to some very difficult problems. So going back to the question here, though, I will give you one example. So there's a base called Laughlin Air Force Base in Del Rio, Texas. At the time I was there, it was the busiest flying training wing in the Air Force. So we were training a majority of the pilots. You get about 700 pilots a year, pilot cadets a year, pilot trainees. And so my squadron was, or my group was consisting of about 6 squadrons, and they were all support. So I had all the, what we call security forces, which is basically our military police and our security all in one. I had the engineers, I had a bunch of other things, but we were the support for that base. So we were foundational for that base. And out of the 6 squadron commanders that I had 1 female squadron commander, and she had one of the most challenging squadrons. And when we brought her on, when I hired her, the squadron that she was taking over was, I would say, problematic, but problematic in a way that it got very comfortable with the status quo. And they were not really performing well, and they were complaining a lot. And, you know, for lack of a better term, too, they also had a lot of, I think, internal just discord among themselves, not just very motivated. And so we hired her to come in and make a difference here, and she was given a very challenging problem, because the other aspect of this is that her deputy was a civilian male who was very much set in his ways and was not a very good performer, but had enough tenure that it was very difficult to remove him. And I, you know, what happened with him was that over the years he was not documented about his performance. And every time he knew how to work the system, and he knew that if I just waited it out, the military would rotate out and there'd be a new commander and a new staff here, and I could reset the wheel here. And so he knew how to manipulate the system. Nobody held him accountable, and nobody documented it. And again, if you don't have any documentation, it doesn't really count. So you gotta do that. So when I brought her in there, the first thing I did was I said, I did basically a public address to her squadron, and I said, she has my complete trust and confidence, and this is the way it's going to be, and we are looking to make some changes. And she came in there, and she did a fantastic job. She rose to the occasion. She started documenting all the missteps that her deputy did. She started motivating the squadron, and just to add in, typically as a commander in the military, you're usually in the job for about 2 years. So if you're given the privilege to command at any level, it's only about a 2-year assignment, and then you're rotating out and somebody else is coming in. So it's a pretty quick pace. And as most everyone on this panel, and certainly in the crowd, know, it takes probably your first 90 days or so, you're still trying to get your feet under you, trying to understand what's going on, trying to figure out, you know, where you're at with regards to what you want to do and accomplish in that short period of time. So the long story short is that she rose to the occasion. At the end of her 2 years, that civilian ended up getting removed because there was enough documentation that it led to disciplinary action. And it was a good thing because that squadron needed to have that change. And she also, that squadron was the highest performing squadron out of the 6 that I had. They earned the most awards, quarterly awards, various awards, and it was probably the most motivated at the time. And so I think that in and of itself was clearly an example of how you can, regardless, bring in the highest performer and tell her what you need to do, or tell that person what you want to be done, and just let them go and do it, right? And part of that was, we call in the military commander's intent. And so what it is that you tell them, okay, here's our objective, here's what I expect, and now go do it. Because a lot of times we're disconnected, right? And if we start interfering, we start micromanaging, it doesn't turn out well, right? It doesn't build confidence, and it shows that we don't trust the person that we're putting in charge. So I gave her commander's intent. I addressed the squadron. I told them that she has my complete trust and confidence, and then she performed and rose to the occasion. And I think that's the example. I have many, but that was the one example that stood out to me in a very challenging environment at the time, being, again, the only female squadron commander and she got support from her peers, but I think it was earning that trust and knowing that she was going to go in and ruffle some feathers within an organization that was underperforming, and yet at the end of the day, it turned out very well because she rose to the task and the squadron followed her.
Great. Colonel Shaffa, thank you. Well, it seems like that she didn't just rise to the occasion. She sounds like she changed the culture of that particular unit. So thanks for sharing that. All right. Back to Sheriff Miyamoto, same question. Have you ever had a situation where one of your female leaders were criticized when they were assigned a task, assignment, or mission? How did you handle the situation?
Yes, I have.
I knew you'd like this one.
I think it can be challenging for anyone to take on a new assignment, to take on new responsibilities. If you're replacing somebody who has long-standing tenure or who has established relations and an established style within, we're, as a paramilitary organization, we're organized by division. We have leadership at different ranks and different responsibilities. Without going into too much detail, in my experience, we had somebody come into the organization that was new, that brought a different perspective, placed in a position where they were responsible for multiple units and divisions. And the challenge is, one, trying to learn on the go when you do that, so that, people below you will have operational knowledge and maybe more experience in those areas, and you have to lean on them. And as the colonel mentioned, not micromanage and try and step into the weeds too much. And that's a balance you have to face. I think to support that person in their new role, what I've done is give very similar commander's intent, just to give that direction first, to provide that support publicly in meetings and in forums where there's updates or other things going on. The behind-the-scenes stuff, though, I think is also equally important, because we could have a tendency in trying our best intentions to support somebody to actually maybe step on people's toes or confuse people that are familiar with a structured chain of command. And here in the sheriff's office, we have a lot of different relations with our command people, a lot of people who have worked together for years, that there's a familiarity involved where sometimes you can be making a phone call about one thing, it turns into another, and then it becomes direction.
Yep.
And so that's one of the challenges, to make sure that it's clear. And I've learned in my position to make sure the communication is more clear and that people have different ways of communicating. So I'm very intentional now in terms of supporting that person clearly, and also with the follow-up, making sure that whatever communications there are, it's not meant to undermine or circumvent any of the chains. it has to be very intentional when we do that too, because of the things I mentioned. So in my experience, and the individual who was given certain tasks and direction met with some resistance at some points because of people who had stronger knowledge of the operational considerations. And there's a learning curve there that you have to be aware of and support. And that's where I was more intentional as well, trying to be that sounding board and making sure, as Chief Scott mentioned earlier, making sure that you give the people the opportunity to come to you and talk to you and be open to helping to support them in whatever communication form, whether it's that phone call before or after meetings, whether it's the support publicly in a meeting, whether it's a visual, like giving somebody an actual idea by writing it down and creating a recipe. People have different ways, and you have to just learn your people on the go, make sure you know what the best form of communication is for that person, and then be supportive without undermining what they're doing. And that's what my experience has been. Had mixed levels of success in doing that, but I think, you know, there's no training for us in these leadership positions. When you become a sheriff or a chief, when you get to the rank of colonel or above, we don't go to training that tells us exactly what we're supposed to do. We bring with us our experience, and then we learn on the go. And so a lot of my learning as sheriff has been in those situations when you're trying to support people without overstepping and micromanaging.
Sheriff, thank you. Appreciate that. Let's go to Chief Kevin Franklin. New question. What initiatives or programs have you participated in to support the advancement of women in a leadership role?
Well, I think one of the things I try to do is ask the question is, what do you need, right? And we try to do that for all different staff. But Wiley, that Chief Carroll was talking about, is an example. So as a new chief, I hadn't gone to Wiley before. I still haven't gone. I would like to go eventually. Maybe I'll sign the training order. But I asked our team, like, hey, what should we be doing? And we've looked at initiatives like the 30 by 30. Is this something that we need to be involved in? What areas can we be recruiting in? And, what training opportunities would be helpful to try to get people ready for advancement through their careers? And so those are the types of things that I look for, because frankly, I won't know personally, right? I mean, that's where I need the people who are living the experience to let me know what's important to them and how can I support them, because I think that's the key as a chief, is figuring out what support your people need and then delivering that, right? We're giving them the tools to do the job, and that support is, I think, one of the most important tools that we can give them, so that they can let us know what they need, and then we can figure out how to make that happen, or we can empower them to figure out how to make that happen, and we can figure out how we're going to fit it in the budget or the staffing plan or whatever it is that it's going to take to support that.
Great. Thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. I think it's time to inject one of those questions here. This one's for Chief Scott. What keeps you passionate about staying in law enforcement, Chief?
Ooh. The people, really. I mean, the people, the job itself. I mean, this job has always, this career has always, and from day one, I mean, I knew this was it. This was the career that I would be my life's work, that would make my life's work. So the purpose of what we do, I think, always motivates me, but it's really the people. It's the people that we work with, the people that I work with, the people that I've come to know and love, and then the people that we interact with and that we serve. I mean, sometimes this profession can bring, great joy and tremendous, successful outcomes, and sometimes it's just the little things that just helping somebody on a little issue that makes their day a little bit better. That always inspires me. So, as we all know, many people in the audience and on this table, we're all in this profession. There's a lot of peaks and valleys, and I always try to stay, even about those peaks and valleys, and remind myself of why I came here. And oftentimes, we'll run across a situation that reminds us of why we're here, and that inspires me and keeps me going. And the higher you go up in any organization, you're not hands-on doing the work. So a lot of the work, the vicarious, experience of seeing the work being performed by the people that are actually out in the field doing the work, I still get fired up about that. I'll read about a good arrest or some heroic action, or sometimes just, everyday, human kindness that our people are doing day in and day out. And it keeps me inspired. So, 36 years almost into this, and I still enjoy coming to work every day. I very, very, very seldomly have a bad day in this profession. Even when things aren't going well, there's always something to be proud of and hopeful. So that keeps me, I think, mentally in the right place.
Chief, thank you. And I see it all the time when I see you. You're always happy. You're always in a great mood. And, thank you for sharing that. That's some great advice moving forward. This one's going to be for Chief Carroll. As a leader during your career, share a situation where you assigned a female supervisor or manager to change the culture of a team or unit. How were they able to change the culture, and how did they get buy-in?
So as a captain with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, I had a lieutenant who, she was really rambunctious, had a lot of energy. She wanted to create what is called a CERT team, crisis response team, and she had a lot of energy around this subject. She did all the research, and she mentioned, Captain, I would love to do this with Alameda County because we don't have a CERT team, and I think it'd be an asset for the department. And so what I wanted to do is to let her know that it is a great idea, so I supported her all the way through. So we augmented our budget to allow for the CERT team to create the CERT team. And initially we got a lot of pushback from various parts of the Sheriff's Department, but as we started to make progress and we were able to identify individuals who could take part in the CERT team, we saw that the agency started to galvanize around the CERT team. And the very first year of having this CERT team, they actually went out and took part in a regional competition where they did a number of exercises and they were evaluated on the exercise. And that CERT team came out number 1 in that competition. So we went from an agency that did not have a CERT team to an agency that created a CERT team, and we became the number 1 CERT team in that competition for the exercises that was presented. And so she got a lot of notoriety behind it, and then the sheriff allowed her to create 2 other CERT teams off of that 1 CERT team. So it was a really proud moment for me because I saw someone who had an idea, and I was able to help her achieve the goal that she wanted to achieve. And now that's something that we have on Alameda County Sheriff's Office till this day. So.
Great, Chief. Thank you.
Sure.
Let's go back to Colonel Shaffa. Colonel, in your opinion, what are the biggest barriers women face in attaining leadership positions today?
Well, let me first start on the military side of the house, like how we've evolved. Back in 1948, President Truman passed a measure or an act called the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, right? That was 1948. And that basically was allowing women to come in, and it was comprised of about 2% of the overall population in the military at the time. And the roles were pretty restricted. But then we fast forward to the 1970s, and then you start seeing more opening for women in wider roles across all of the military, including aviation, from an Air Force perspective. But still, there were limitations, right? And then fast forward again to 1991, and you start to see Congress at the time actually passed a measure. They repealed a combat exclusion law that was in place, and that opened the door for women to start flying in combat and doing other particular measures there, right? And then now you're talking 1993's time frame, you start seeing them into fighter aircraft and other types of roles where that was a male-dominated environment. And they started breaking barriers there as well. And then most recently, you're talking probably 2020 timeframe. Now you're starting to see in special operations in particular, whether that's special forces or any of the other special operations forces across the board, you start to see now the door open to allow women to come in. You know, obviously that's probably the toughest environment to try to break into because of the ingrained and very, I guess you could say, testosterone-focused environment that's there. It's all very physical, very much in your face, and very fast-paced and operational. And I think, but you're starting to see doors opening, and you're starting to see women that are succeeding in those roles, to include going to Army Ranger School, for example, which is, you know, one of the tougher schools. And they're coming out and they're being integrated as part of the teams now. So I think that there is still work to be made, and a lot of progress is being made, but it's a work in progress as well, right? And you know, I like to say that, you know, learning continues for a lifetime, and we want to continue to make sure that we have those opportunities, because again, if we're not doing that, we're not taking advantage of the talent that we have. And that's a very important aspect of that, because there's everybody's there to contribute. And as I like to say, that there's only so many positions in an organization, and those positions are there because you need them. And so we want to bring people in, we want to take advantage of their talent. And I think, as many of the panelists have said here, is you also want to keep an open mind, because you need to have that diversity of thought, not just diversity of backgrounds, but also diversity of thought. And so if you don't have people thinking differently or bringing their talents to the table, then we're not really looking at the perspective, and we're not taking advantage of all the talent that we have, and we're really not performing at the highest capacity that we can perform in some very challenging environments.
Colonel, thank you. We're going to go back to Sheriff Miyamoto on this question. Sheriff, who are some female leaders that you admire, and how have they influenced your views on leadership today?
Internally, we had a former undersheriff, Jan Dempsey, who, when I joined the department, she was a captain. She gave one of our many classes that we took when you're going through your training process. She appeared to be a hard charger, an individual who didn't suffer fools, or somebody who presented very well in terms of being a captain in a sheriff's office and that image that you have. And she actually, in our class, had said, hey, anytime you're in the Hall of Justice, just come on by the jail and say hi. And so, of course, being naive, I thought that was an actual open invitation for a new trainee deputy. And I showed up one weekend with a couple of my co-workers, and she was a little surprised that we had actually taken up on her offer. But she's somebody who I admire because of that perspective. She rose through the ranks, went to chief deputy, and then went to undersheriff, our second in command. And she is somebody who took the extra time, despite that image, despite that reputation, took the extra time to talk to me about things. Actually was the first person she actually came to me when I was a lieutenant to offer me the position of lieutenant in our investigations unit, to take over for someone who was there for 17 years. And so that was somebody who was an actual institution in our agency, and to have that distinction of being the next in line after that, and for her to come to speak to me about it, was very humbling, inspirational, very, very intentional on her part, and something that really inspired me to do well and really embrace that opportunity and that responsibility. So she's been somebody who's been that mentor. Plus, we learned over the years that we had an affinity for country music and horses, and that became a personal thing also. And I see a lot of Undersheriff Dempsey and our current Undersheriff Johnson, and Kathy and I rose through the ranks together. Our careers followed a parallel path, and could be an example of how, regardless of gender, you have people who move up through the ranks through ability and recognized potential. And so I'm just happy that she's currently our undersheriff right now, that she carries on that tradition of one of the people that inspired me. And I see the extra time that she takes to talk to people, to do what we've talked about making sure your door is open and that you do that extra. And it's not really extra, it's just being supportive and taking the time. And she still does that, and I'm hopeful that there are people out there that were inspired by her, just as Jan Dempsey inspired me.
Sheriff, awesome. Those are great choices. I want to save some time so that the audience can get engaged. And on behalf of the San Francisco Sheriff's Office, I want to thank everyone who is here today, because this means a lot to us. And 30 by 30 is very dear to us, and we are going to make that goal. We're pushing forward, and I wish I could have asked all the questions to our panelists today, but it's about everyone here in the crowd today. So we have 2 microphones on each end. So if anybody has any questions for our guests, please come on up and ask away. Awesome.
Hi, good morning. Shelley Cresby from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, and my question is for Sheriff Miyamoto, because I think you have some personal perspective on this question as well as professional, and it has to do with how do we retain our mothers and the females that have families. And Chief Scott, your comments on it were very insightful on this issue, because I do think it's been one of our most challenging issues at our agency. With that, because your wife was in law enforcement and maintaining the respect and privacy of the decisions that were made as a family, do you have any other perspective for us, having been on both sides of it? You see the value of us trying to find a way to retain the females while allowing them to balance that home life. At the same time, you, from a husband and a father side, I think saw it and the impact that it had on your family. So for those of us that are trying, we've had some females in our organization that we have identified as having the potential to make it to the executive level. And during that time, we've then lost them to either raising a family or in some cases, taking care of elderly parents also. So we're looking, I know we're talking about it, we're all looking at that, but it seems like maybe you might have some perspective because you've seen it from both sides.
I can share that perspective. First and foremost, I want to say condolences on the recent loss for your agency. I believe it was Deputy Cuevas.
Deputy Cuevas, yes,
And,
thank you.
Definitely, the loss affects all of us, and our respect and prayers and thoughts are with you and your San Bernardino family.
Appreciate it.
For the question itself, I think we've touched on some things and really haven't talked about some of the elephants in the room openly. And one is that this is a male-dominated profession, that we have that level of machismo or viewpoint. The warrior mentality sometimes is pervasive in terms of some of the things that we do and see. And then that undermines other experiences and responsibilities. And, my wife, to make it personal or to review the personal, we have 5 kids, and every time she was pregnant, she was put into legal department with the police department. And actually, she left our agency because she did not feel supported by the male-dominated supervisory and managerial staff. She felt she was marginalized in terms of literally being a good worker, so always made to work. And she felt there was a certain bias towards her in decision points at different points in her career, which is one of the reasons why she left and flourished in the police department and was given opportunity there and accommodations when she went through her pregnancies, and we had our child care. The way we did it, because we're a 24-hour profession, we literally, for childcare, one of us would work days, one of us would work mids, and accommodations were made by our respective agencies in terms of our assignments. From my perspective as an executive now in the department, in terms of, leaves obviously are something that there's a process for with our human resources department. But the support in terms of assignment and accommodation for people, we've become more flexible in our scheduling. We have a process now to address issues for our supervisors. They actually give us a list every 6 months of preferred assignments or watches and things like that. And we try every time we do a rotation, what we call draft day, in terms of moving people around, we try to accommodate what their needs are based on those letters of interest and different assignments that they wish to see. They get at least one of the 4 that we're looking at. So that gives a little more ability for that individual to dictate where they're going and what they're doing. There's also accommodations made with through the process over challenges that someone may have, childcare, taking care of family members, leaves that we have. We have intermittent leave, we have continuous leave that we have our FMLA, which everyone has. And we're very open to accommodating people. It's very challenging, but I know that we've had a cultural shift because before it was like, hey, no, we need you here, this is it. Now it's much more accommodating in terms of not just myself, but the entire process and the people we have in leadership positions. So I think we've benefited over the years of kind of having that be a part of our culture. In terms of trying to infuse that into another agency or try to break down some of those institutional or traditional barriers, I think it's challenging, but I also think it's exactly what we're talking about here by putting women in leadership positions and bringing that perspective to the decision-making table is where you're going to see those changes that we've experienced in your agency.
Awesome, thank you. And then just one more question. I'm just curious if any of your agencies have any childcare programs. I know San Diego Police Department has recently put together a program, and we're starting to look into that. Our challenge is with a very large agency with multiple contract cities, divisions. Our geography is 20,000 square miles, so it makes it challenging to centralize a child care program, but I was curious if any of your agencies had one. Yes.
At San Jose State, they have a child care program for all employees.
Okay.
But for the police department, what we utilize is we use the work from home option as much as possible. Every duty station or every assignment I've ever had, first thing I do is I look for a lactation station. And if we don't have one, we create a lactation station. And so at San Jose State, we recently created a wellness room and a lactation station for those who may need those services.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your question, appreciate that. Next, great.
Hello, my name is Lynette Hart. While I've not been a police officer, I've been a police recruiter for years. And one of the things I'd like to educate your audience on real quickly before I ask my question is, I'm currently working with Senator Scott Peters' office out of San Diego to help pass a bill called the Police Officers Child Care Act. And what it is if it's passed, it will be $28 million in grants given out over 4 years, and your departments will be able to create your own police departments. So right now, I'm in the process of talking to different senators, different police chiefs, sheriffs, to get behind the bill so that we can get that passed for you. My question is, currently there has been negative attention regarding the 30 by 30 initiative. A few male officers have been vocal. It is a DEI issue, and qualified men are being replaced with unqualified women in law enforcement. How do you respond to these types of challenging opinions?
Gentlemen, Chief Scott?
Well, I think we have to really stick to our values. And, there's a lot of rhetoric out there right now. There's a lot of things happening nationally with these issues. However, organizationally, our values are our values. In terms of San Francisco, our values are our values, and we just keep doing what we do. and that is being inclusive as a department, being inclusive as a city. We have to protect ourselves, of course, from litigation and make sure that we do things in a way that it doesn't breed litigation. But sometimes, even when you do everything right, you get sued. And I think that's where you really have to, just bow your back and stick to your values and do the things that we do that we know are right. And in terms of our department, we have a women's leadership committee, that really focuses in on 30 by 30. Some of the people in this room are on that committee. And we put that in place so there's direct dialogue between the chief of police and these issues and the people that are affected the most by these issues, women. It's not exclusive to men, of course, but the thing is, if we don't stick to our values, we're going to lose our way. And we see so many things happening right now in terms of every day when you turn on the news, there's some anti-DEI, erasing things from the history books, all this craziness, right? I think as leaders, we have an opportunity to be strong in terms of our values, be bold in terms of not being pushed back. And again, who knows where that's going to lead, but we have to do the right thing, and that's how we approach it in our department. We're going to keep doing what we do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any more questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
For my fellow panelists. When we talk about 30 by 30, I'm curious to know if you have any insight as to how to really infuse some energy into the processes themselves, like if there's anything innovative or out of the box thinking in terms of approaches to the recruitment and the offering of the opportunity to women to join. As I mentioned earlier, we're at 20% for ourselves, and that's our total staff. Our uniform staff is more along the lines of the national average of 13 point something percent. So I'm just curious if you all have different perspectives or thoughts on how to get more engaged in this process.
Well, I think for us, sitting down with women and really focusing in on the issues that matter, to try to make our department a department that people say, hey, come and look at what we do. We care, we are doing all these different things. The question about daycare, we don't have it yet, but we also looked at San Diego's daycare program. Hopefully we will get a daycare program for our members. And it's led by women, but it's not just a women's issue. As a father, I struggled with daycare, like you, Sheriff, working whatever shift I had to work to make it work. And that affects all of us. But fundamentally, to make policies and put policies in place that really matter to women, changing the culture of, like you said, it's a male-dominated profession, and I think a lot of things over the years have been seen in a man's perspective, in a man's viewpoint of the world. That needs to change, and what we're trying to do is focus in on really fixing ourselves. Fixing maybe not be the right word, but improving in those issues. So women that look at the San Francisco Police Department will say, hey, that's the place that we want to work. And it's building it from the inside out, and hopefully we can showcase some of the things that we're doing. There's a lot of good ideas on the table. Some things we've been able to do pretty quickly. Some things are going to take some time. But that's one way we're approaching it.
Thanks, Chief. Is there anybody else that wants to expand on what your agency does for 30 by 30?
What we try to do is we try to highlight our women officers. We have a controlled audience with our students, so we really showcase them around campus, and we give them the space so that they can talk about their purpose and the value of having women in law enforcement. So they speak to a lot of the student groups, especially the sororities, and they do a lot of recruitment. And so now we have approximately 6 female cadets who are considering law enforcement. So they do a really good job at sharing with the public why it's important to have women in this space. We also utilize our cultural humility course. The cultural humility course gives the officers the opportunity to share why they became police officers and some of the challenges, and they use that space to talk about some of the challenges that they face as women, but how they've been able to overcome some of those challenges. So I try to be as supportive as possible of 30 for 30. We try to recruit as much as possible for women, and I think we're doing a pretty good job for a small agency.
If I may just add in here from a military perspective, right? So one of the challenges we have is the same with regards to attracting, women to come into the military and do a lot of the challenging roles. It was interesting that back in between, I think the latest poll right now, and it was an official poll that was taken from within the Department of Defense, between 2012 and 2019, they asked young people, really, both male and female. It says, would you definitely consider or probably consider joining the military? And 13% of them came back and said yes, right? And this is 16 to 21 year olds, right? So this is where we're targeting to try to get them to come in the next few years. And I think, as everyone knows in the room, there's been some challenges with recruiting over the last few years for a variety of reasons. But then you took the poll again. Between 2020 and 2023, that number dropped from 13% to 10%, right? So that 3% doesn't sound like a statistically significant amount, but that 3% made up about, if you count population of the United States, about 1 million people, right? And that's pretty significant when you're looking at, okay, why is that? And so you're looking at those, and I think a lot of it has to do with, exactly what the panelists have been saying is you got to show them that there's people out there that are succeeding in those roles, especially on the female side of the house, that they can go and do those tasks. And these people are very successful in doing it. And I think from the military perspective, we've gotten better at that. We've actually, you see a lot more out there. Even in Hollywood, you start seeing movies that are made of women who have accomplished things in combat, in the military, and have really set the standard. But I think in a way we haven't really done a very good job of that in the past. And what's also interesting is that you ask them, in women in particular, it's like, would you be prepared to fight a war or go into a combat situation? And you ask the population that I was talking about, 16 to 21, and 26% of the males in that environment said yes, and only 8% of young women said yes. And why is that? Why don't they feel confident? Because again, I don't think they see that there is an opportunity there and that we can prepare them to be successful in those environments. And yes, those environments are challenging and they're not for everyone, but it doesn't mean that it have to be male dominated either. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we have to make it more public, and we're getting better at this, but again, it's a work in progress.
Great. Colonel Shaffa, thank you. We're going to have to wrap it up. We want to stay on point. We made it. It's 11 o'clock. First of all, it's been an honor for me to be part of this panel. Just your reputations, your bios speak for themselves. I want to thank you for being here today on behalf of the sheriff and the San Francisco Sheriff's Office and A.S. Carter. Thanks for being part of this conference. We do appreciate it. And once again, our panelists, Chief Michael Carroll, Chief Kevin Franklin, Sheriff Paul Miyamoto, Chief William Scott, and Colonel Eric Shaffa. I want to go ahead and hand out these certificates. Thank you for everything you've done.
Actually, first, we have one more question.
Sure.
Right over here to the right.
Someone
Go
snuck
ahead
up
and
there.
Step up to the mic.
Oh, you didn't see me sneak up? Hi, Fabian Brown. I'm the president of Bayleaf, but I've been in the Sheriff's Department from 1996. And back in the day, when we were recruited to join departments, and that includes the fire department, the police department, and the sheriff's department, they had training sessions for women because in my day, we couldn't jump 6-foot fences, and we weren't trained to really run. And so they had that training going on. And something to think about, you stop laughing. Okay, it's the truth. And actually, I excelled in all three of them. And I was a firefighter, I was a police, and I was deputy sheriff. And I was also a national park ranger. So there. But the point being is something to think about, because I know we're out of time. But something to think about in your departments is offering that training again. The San Francisco Police Department did it up on the 6th floor, 7th floor, where the gym is. And we had so many men and women, and I go around trying to recruit people to join into law enforcement still today. And one of the things they run into is either they can't pass the written, they don't understand the questions, they can't get over the fence, or they're afraid to try. And so when you have that kind of support to get people motivated and show them they can make that by training them to do that, then you create that safe space for them to actually go. So I'm done.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we are going to wrap things up right now. I do have a couple of announcements. First, thank you to all of our panelists. Let's give them a warm round of applause.